Hey y'all, Freeze Cracked here. This is a little thing talking about a weird, different way to mess with slabs. Somebody was talking online about, gee, can you take, a fairly thin slab and work it using indirect? People were saying, no, they didn't think so. Well, I think so because I don't really see any difference between indirect and anything else as far as what it can do other than it's more powerful and more controlled than some other techniques. So the real issue with slabs, which I made one other slab video, I think, and I don't work slabs normally. I got this from somewhere, but there's a thin slab of novaculite, not edged really well or anything like that as far as the cutting of it and everything. But here's the deal with slabs. Slabs are not strong structurally, and that's why everybody breaks them all the time. The reason they're not strong structurally is because they're flat, they're thin. Convexity is strength. It doesn't have any. So it's easy to put bending forces on it and fold it. The other thing that's a real problem is the square edges. It's got square edges all around, which is exactly the worst thing for a napper. The square edges, there's no way to attack them with percussion normally that doesn't cause hinges. The reason for that is this. You can't come at an angle that wouldn't cause hinges because your tool will just skate off of them. So when you go in at an angle that it won't just skate off, then when you get the 50-degree Hertzian cone coming off of that, it kicks up into it and it hinges it. To make matters even worse, it's got a knife edge down at the bottom, so if your tool skates down when you hit or push, it'll go out to that edge, and then it's too low and catch it and make a little flake, and when that little flake hinges down, it jams it up. It's just like a failed platform. When it hinges down, it jams it up and you get little hinges. So you see people working these things in a manner that gives them a very slabby looking finished point, where they push flakes. They take a slab, they push flakes past the center line on the other side, and then they trim the edges at a steep bevel so that they don't mess up their flaking pattern in the middle that they like. Well, the problem with that is you get a real slabby looking result because you got a flat point with trimmed edges. The way to make a point look great with a slab is not to use a slab, but to go ahead and grind it and fog it, do fog work, flake over grind. That's the only way you're going to get a perfect looking point with perfect parallel flakes. I do a lot of stuff that looks like that without using slabs at all. I just hit rocks and bring them down and get them regularized and then shoot the parallel flakes across. But my stuff doesn't look perfect, doesn't look like fog work. Well, I don't care because that's, it doesn't matter to me. I like the way it looks, so that's fine. But if you want, the perfect look of a fog point, you need a grinder in addition to slabs. But there is a way to work slabs so they look pretty good. You can take short flakes, and I may have said this in the previous, I think I did one other video on slab. Take short flakes on your first sets, get the square edges gone, come down to where it's just a regular edge. By that time you'll have some convexity, and then push, and then try and get it real regularized, and then push your remaining set across. You can do that with force. If you use a lot of force, you can push a set. You can sort of ignore pre-existing little tiny flakes and everything like that, and get your edge to the center line, grind it real good, and get it straight, and you can go ahead and do that ordered set that it really looked pretty good. But anyway, you saw where I just tapped this down. I don't want to talk too much about generalized theory. The whole thing, if you take, I'll just go anywhere. If you take this and you hit it like that, you're going to break it, right? Because you're putting bending forces on it. Well, there's a simple solution to that. Tilt it down. If you tilt it down just anywhere along in here and hit, what you end up with is a bevel. You end up with a bevel. Well, guess what? That's a platform to go back the other way. You need to go all along here, and you can do that. And you're not going to break it if you do it right. Well, you might break it if you drop it, but Just came back from 5 days at a nap in, and I am exhausted and dehydrated, so you have to bear with me a little bit. But if you notice, I just took a bunch of flakes and I didn't snap it. Okay, now I am using support, like always. I'm out on the end snap's a concern. Jam to the back of your hand, squeeze it up here, tilt it way down, put it barely on there, and hit it. And guess what? I just hit on the end of a thinnish slab, made myself a great platform, and I didn't fold it. Okay. This isn't going to be a long video. I'm not going to just sit here and finish this thing because that's too tedious. Okay, so once you go around it and get you a bunch of bevels like that, you can go bevel it any way you want to. You could alternate it if you wanted to and have the equivalent of a sinuous edge with one pass just by flipping it for every other flake, if you want to do that. You can go all around and do it, or you can start on one corner and you can do the whole thing around from one corner and come back to the other, and just by the time you're through have a sinuous edge. Well, once you got that, if you grind everything well, you have the makings of some short flakes and convexity, and you can use indirect for that. But I always tend to hold it at an angle where it's going to do some good with running. See? And I do not do straight zigzagging like people do. I don't go straight up, straight down, straight up, because what you end up with is a steep bevel. And steep bevels, climbing hills doesn't work super well. What I do is I put it at a slightly oblique angle and I run it at that angle. Like, see, instead of going straight in like this, I'm going like this, and I run it at an angle where it kind of pushes it ahead of me. And that gets it going, but it's not so steep. And then if it doesn't work well enough, you can go up a little more and do the same thing again. But it's still not so steep. So I'm getting, that went up halfway. So I got rid of half of that square edge right there, and it's not so steep. If you want to continue on that same thing, if it isn't above the center line yet, and you don't feel confident that you can hit on the other side without breaking it, you just keep taking little bitty flakes on that same location, like that, until you get it above the center line. Abrade it, then flip it. And now I want to bevel, I want to go obliquely back the other way, so I'm going to tilt it a little bit angle there. And if it's too close to the center line, you're worried about it, tilt it down a little bit. But keep your support, on the back edge and on both ends, so you don't have vibration. See, I hit back this way a little bit on it to push it ahead of me a little bit that way. Okay, so now that's about to the center line. You say, well, it didn't quite to the center line. Okay. Hey, a braid after you hit, when you got a knife edge, a braid, because a knife edge on one side of a platform and a non-knife edge on the other side of the platform makes the flake come off wrong. It tries to tilt, and a lot of times you'll end up with a gouge on one side of your flake channel and a feather on the other side, and you'll get an ugly divot-looking thing. Besides that, your platforms will fail. Okay, so I turned that so it's down now, so I can just push it ahead. Push it ahead. Okay, so my square edge is gone right in here now. I'm going to do a couple more. I'm going to get this sinuous just about halfway, and then I'm just going to show you what I would do from there. Pushing ahead of me a little bit. Now the reason I'm not regrinding that is because I'm coming above it. So now it's right kind of at the center line, and I assume that when I grind it, it'll be a little bit above the center line. So I can flip it. It's more at the center line, so I'm like, ooh, I don't want to put bending forces on it, tilt it down a little bit and go back this other direction. Go down a little bit, go back the other direction. Okay, so I've got a non-square edge with bevels on it all along there, which means I probably, can work that now without hinging it. Okay, so I'm opportunistic now. I'm going to go to whichever side is favorable, and I'm going to go a little flatter angle and drive them in a little more. I hope I've got this where you can see all this. I think maybe I do. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one and try and drive it in a little bit more. Not a lot, just not totally flat. I mean, not totally driving in, but see what it did? It came in some. Flip it, it's right kind of at the center line, tilt it down a little bit because of that. Don't grab too big a bite. Going in a little bit more. How far you can go in depends on where your platform is. If your platform is down low towards the face, you can go in, but you're going to get a real thin flake. If your platform's up toward the center line, if you want to go in, you need to support underneath it with padded leather. What do I mean by that? Well, it's real simple. If you hit downward steep, but you've got padded leather underneath it, it runs. And I've said that before in other videos. I'm going to show you. That platform right there is close to the center line. I'm going to go ahead and put the leather underneath it and bridge on both sides. It means I'm holding on both sides of it, not directly under it. Don't want my finger in the way. So then I'm going to take and put this on it, and I hit straight down. Now what did it do? Well, I hit straight down, but because the leather was there, it wrapped in and ran in fairly much a feather termination right there, and that was because of the leather. That's the support. The energy wasn't allowed to do what it naturally would do. So when I hit on my leg, I turn something upside down and hit straight down on it, boom, it wraps. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Okay, on this one, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to show you how I cheat on stuff a little bit. There's my platform. That right there would be where most people would normally hit. That's too low. I'm going to get a little short step flake. Plus there's a little bit almost of a concavity from the deltas from these other things. So instead of fixing it, I'm just going to go up a little higher on the side of it and hit there. What, you say? That's crazy? Well, there's a reason my name's Freeze Cracked. Okay, so drove in a little higher. All right, so and again, this is the reason I don't normally drive stuff real far on the initial passes, because you get those little fingernail hinges. Well, I don't really care because I can easily adjust how far I drive in on the other side and eliminate those. But if you have problems with those, go at a little bit steeper angle and don't make it run so far until you get your convexity established and your terminations will feather. Of course, not necessarily with novaculate, but novaculate ought to be called fingernail hinge material, because it likes to do them fingernail hinges. But that one's feathered. It doesn't look feathered, but it is pretty much. So anyway, how much time am I into this? That's about all I think I wanted to show you on this particular video. I was at Niblett's Bluff Knapping this weekend, and of course, different people there doing different things, which is always interesting. But, oh, I just hit on the end, and I didn't end snap it. Why is that? Well, it was about the support. I had leather underneath it. I drove inward, and I had support on the back edge and support on that and support on the front. And when you drive inward like that and you support it, there is none of that harmonic, nasty vibration that makes the thing break in half and fall apart. So basically, that's the story. Oh, I was going to tell you there's at least one person there, goes by San P Baby online on, based on Airheadology. who was saying that he really is pretty much getting away from pressure work and just doing indirect, and he's using some small punches too, which I'm not going to get away from pressure. I mean, I use pressure all the time for different stuff, but the point is, and I'm being careful on that because it's very steep, and I probably would bevel up to it or go up to it better. But so the question is, can you use indirect to work a small little slab? Yep, of course you can. Just another means of reduction. Is it as safe as pressure? No, not if you're good at pressure. But if you know how to support things and you know what to hit and what not to hit and how to hit stuff, then the inherent weakness of slabs isn't an insurmountable issue at all. I mean, people work slabs all the time. Okay, that's about all I had to say, and just bear in mind if you think I was off the wall in this video, I am, because I'm just completely exhausted. Bye for now. Freeze crack.